And I think the lineup of discussions that you have for the evening is quite interesting. And the topic of discussion right now, niche products in an unpredictable world, is I think one of the most relevant topics to discuss today. I'm wrapping my mind around it as we speak. And during these unpredictable times, these open up a plethora of opportunities for us. But at the same time, it's also quite easy to be lost. How not to be lost is what we want to learn today. And who else to learn it from than from Ms. Stephanie Mango. Stephanie is a Senior Vice President at CGI, who leads development and execution of business and solution strategy for a diverse client portfolio in the US federal government. She's been with the IT industry for more than 25 years now, and in many roles across products and services. She has a rich experience across the development lifecycle for custom solutions as well as commercial off-the-shelf solutions. Now, and she, I think she uses all her program management skills to not just create these plans and strategies, but to implement them and then go ahead and support them. That requires a tremendous amount of time management capabilities and a lot of emotional strength to dabble with end-to-end client support. And she spent over a decade leading product organization, and today she leads a geographically dispersed team developing and delivering solutions, and is going to talk about leading and innovating in an unpredictable world. But before I give the stage to Stephanie and we'll listen to what she has to teach us today, and we converse with her, I would like to run some interesting polls that I see Sonal and Menka come up with. So why don't we ask that? So I think the first poll is up. We have the insights that we receive help us increase awareness towards things that bother us the most. With that, I'll take a pause and I'll hand over the stage to Stephanie, and we learn along with her. I have a few questions for her that I've prepared, but I think after going through presentations, we'll have some more exciting questions. Also, audiences, please note down your questions and put them on. I think there is a place to put your questions on the chat window or in the Google Docs. Please go ahead and upload your questions, and we'll take as many questions as we can. Over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Tarun. And interesting polls there. I would have expected mental wellness to be higher, but I'm sure we'll hear more about that. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning. I am very excited to be here and have this opportunity to share some insights I've gained throughout my career. And Manaka, are you putting up the slides for me? Excellent. Thank you. Okay. And you can go ahead and go to the first slide. So we're here today to talk about leadership. And I was talking to my 8-year-old the other morning, and she asked me about what we had done before when there were other pandemics. How did I handle missing school and friends when I was growing up and had to stay at home in these stay-at-home orders? And when I told her we had never experienced anything like this before, she didn't believe me at first, and so we had to talk through that. And then she was kind of thoughtful and said, well, then Mommy, how do you know what to do? If it's never happened before, how do you know what to do? You always know what to do. And then I got a little thoughtful. You know, I work hard to not treat my kids like kids. I lead them like I lead a team, with transparency, empathy, and trust. So how should I respond? Should I admit I have no idea what to do? Should I pretend that you just know these things as you get older and try to get out of the conversation as quickly as I could? And so I decided to stick with my rules and said, well, I learn all the time. I read everything I can. I listen to everyone that I can. I think through all my options, and then I decide what to do. And then here is the most important part. I pay attention to how my decision is working out. And if it isn't working, I'm comfortable admitting I'm wrong and making a different decision and changing course. And Mommy's always thinking ahead to the future. You can always change course if you keep listening and learning. I attempted to explain the economic theory of sunk costs that you should use when you're making decisions, and we went down a very interesting path of Minecraft, which I won't bore you with that story. But in the end, it's all about being decisive, understanding your environment, and being willing to change. Let's go to the next slide. So what's my point? That's my point. When you want to lead in challenging times, you need to understand who you are leading, what environment they're in, and constantly evaluate the current state and the future state. So how do we apply this to product management? Well, if you want to differentiate your product and yourselves as leaders, it requires a few different habits, and that's what we're going to spend some time on today. But first, I wanted to name what we're going through. So in the poll, all of you, not all of you, but the majority of you picked coronavirus as our biggest challenge right now. And it's known as a black swan event. I hadn't heard the term before, I had to Google it myself. But a black swan event represents unpredictable events beyond what's normally expected. And they potentially have severe and catastrophic consequences. They're characterized by being extremely rare, having a severe impact. And the one that I found the most interesting is in the end, there's insistence that they were obvious in hindsight if we had done a better job of predicting. So that's what a black swan event is. And when it happens, human nature is to hunker down. Look at what's happening with this pandemic. Everyone's staying at home, focusing on being safe. In the IT world, we're focusing on keeping the lights running, making sure things are continuing to hum along. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm speaking to you from my bedroom/office, where I've been since early March, and really hoping nobody walks in during this presentation. And if you've created an organization that knows the industry and customers you serve, you'll be ready to stand in front and lead, even if it's from your own bedroom/office. Black swan events require an immediate response to the unexpected, and that's best supported for customers by solution partners who understand their business. So let's talk about that. There are many products that are built to have wide appeal. And in fact, if you listen to the design edition of this festival, you heard from the author of Hooked about designing addictive products specifically for the mass market. I've been working in IT since the 1990s, and not really the cool part of IT. I don't have experience building consumer products. Instead, I focused on business applications, solutions that help governments and businesses accomplish their mission effectively. In fact, in my first job, I answered phones at a help desk, spent about 3 years working on a help desk, learned more in that job than I've learned in any other job since then. And I would answer calls, and then I would go and read the COBOL code to figure out why the solution I was supporting did what it did. So I've seen products go from those old technologies, which generally led to purpose-built systems used by one organization, to current technologies, which enable much more generic products to be built to be able to work across many industries. We're in the everything as a service time. The digital natives are actually starting to make their way into the workforce, and more systems are being configured using low-code, no-code platforms. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate low-code, no-code platforms, and in my job, we deliver some great solutions using them. Let's go to the next slide. But I'm gonna tell you about a little bit of a bias I have, and that is I struggle with the generic solutions that we built up during the commercial off-the-shelf movement that are unwieldy, because they try to use the same solution across many industries. And why do we think we have one solution that can manage an insurance case, a medical case, and a legal case? This doesn't work. These cases are all quite different. And so these COT solutions end up being purchased and then highly customized by each organization, and as a result are costly to maintain. There is a middle road here between custom solutions built for one organization and a generic one that can be used by any industry. And today's technology have enabled us to create a lot more of these that are in that middle space. IT solutions that are targeted at specific industries walk that right line between custom solutions and generic product solutions that everybody needs to customize in order to use. Niche products can focus their investment to serve a narrower set of needs. Back to my case management solution, if I'm focused on medical cases only, I won't end up investing in product enhancements for how courts run or all these other cases get managed. I'll focus all of my investments on the medical community. And as a result, I'll deliver more value to that user community. And the reason I mention niche products, because while the leadership practices we're going to talk about today are relevant for anyone, some are particularly important for leading during Black Swan events and leading industry niche solutions. So back to our topic at hand. What are the most important aspects of leadership? These are always fun to try to boil down for people. So let's go to the next slide. And the first one is being a constant learner. And we have an unusual challenge leading IT products. There's a lot we need to understand, and it is constantly changing. Choosing this career is not an easy path. And the good news is most of you know this, and that's why you're attending this virtual conference, pursuing degrees, you're learning. And what I mean by constant learning is we need to be large consumers of information. We need to read books, we need to read periodicals, and I say that, but I know most of it's online. We need to read stuff online. We need to watch videos. We need to learn. There's a lot for us to learn, and we need to be networkers. We need to talk to other people who are doing similar things and learn from people as well. And really, I put it into three categories for us as in the IT and specifically the product industry. The first thing is we need to understand technology. So to build products, we need to understand the ever-evolving technology landscape, what exists now and what's coming. So you need to learn and read about technologies that may be applicable. And having been someone who received my degree in IT when there was no such thing as a web browser, I can assure you this requires constant learning. The next thing you really need to understand is your industry. So back to my previous example, if I were to build solutions for the medical community, I don't need to be a medical doctor myself, but I need to know what's happening in that community. What are they dealing with every day? What are the trends? I work right now with the US federal government on cyber solutions, back office solutions, and many others. To stay up to date, I read the industry trade rags. I watch the TV shows that talk about what's going on in government IT. I actively participate in industry organizations. I build relationships and I talk to the people who are in the industry so I can understand their reality, what it is they're experiencing every day. The third thing we really need to know is the customers we serve. Beyond just knowing the industry, you need to know the customers you serve, the actual humans, and their customers, and what they need. What are their challenges and opportunities, and how does your product enable their success? And we all know this. This is the heart of user-centered design. I'm sure you've talked about it a lot during this festival. And to do that, we really need to listen to our customers and actually listen to them. You know, I was judging a case competition on Friday as part of a leadership training at CGI. And in the case, we did like a role play. I was in the role of the customer. I was the CEO of a company. And the team that won this friendly competition listened to me. They researched me in advance. They understood my industry. And in the meeting, they watched my facial expressions. They listened to the questions I asked. And then the key part, they adjusted what they were saying. That makes all the difference. And so for me, when it comes to understanding my customers, one of the best practices that I've employed is developing relationships with customers who have different perspectives and then using them as informal sounding boards. You know, look, when we have a product, we have formal user groups and we have lots of avenues that we create to hear from our customers and to communicate with our customers. And we need to continue with all those. They give us great insight into what's happening. You can't replace the value, though, of having a handful of trusted advisors. And please make sure they're the trusted advisors that tell you the unvarnished truth. They don't mince words. They tell you exactly how they feel and what they think. And make sure that it's people from many different perspectives. And if you have that group of trusted advisors, you can then use them to vet certain things that you might try, get an idea of what's happening, and get more truth than you might through some of the user group settings. And for those of you out there who are developers and listening to all of this and are thinking to yourselves, I don't need to know this to successfully develop code. I focus all my learning on technology. I'm going to challenge you to think differently. The best developers I know are those who understand the industry and the customers they are serving. I know it's not a priority that everyone places, but I tell you, time and time again, the developers who really understand that market, they're the ones that build the right thing the first time. And in that iterative development process, we're not going back and back. They get it right the first time because they understand that user group. So this really applies for everyone as far as learning goes. And if you do all of this, you're going to achieve what Govind from Adobe talked about earlier in the festival, when he talked about how good product managers differentiate themselves by the art of storytelling. If you listen to his talk, you may recall he said that you shouldn't be talking about features for your product. I don't want a list of widgets and things that you're going to add. You need to be able to tell a story about the problem you're trying to solve, who you're solving it for, and why it's important to solve it. That why is very critical. So if you can get that in and you can tell that story, you're going to be able to get where you need to go. And to do that, you need to truly understand your customer, your industry, and the technology. So let's go to the next slide. And innovate is our next thing. And again, very widely used and overused in our industry. And what I want to talk about is some practical things to focus on leading and innovating. The first one is innovating with your customers. So at CGI, innovation is very client-centric. It's inspired by our day-to-day interactions with our customer in our operations. We don't have a bunch of people sitting in a closed room, cooking up the next cool feature and throwing it at people. We're iteratively working with our customers side by side, whether it's in a meeting room or in a Zoom call these days. And we develop solutions that are uniquely tailored to the needs of their industry, their geography, and their challenges. And look, there's a reason methodologies have evolved to iterative development on integrated Scrum teams. It's because it works. So actually use them and make sure that you have that close interaction with your customer as you're doing your development. The second thing is, how we think about innovation. And this is a little bit more about how you talk to yourself about innovation. For years, I struggled with looking at myself and thinking I'm an innovator. I had invention and innovation kind of all scrambled up in my head and thought they were one thing. And I thought, well, I'll never invent something new. I'm not smart enough to invent a light bulb or an elevator. What I am good at is looking at something and figuring out how to make it better or finding a new use for it. That's my kind of innovation. Innovation is really just the process of applying new or old ideas to business and technology challenges, creating value for our stakeholders. Leadership requires that a new proposed solution prior to development not only defines how it applies to the immediate client needs, but how it could be adapted over time to address future challenges. And again, the why. Why is it important to a client? So the next thing I want to talk about with innovation is I'm going to give you a new methodology tool to try. When you're trying to get a group, maybe a group of people that's similar to me, don't really consider themselves innovators. And when we talk about innovation or an ideation session, they get scared because they don't think they can contribute. And it's a methodology called yes and it's leveraged from the comedy improv industry. If you haven't read about it or seen about it, and there's actually a lot of books that have been written at this point, go out to YouTube and search yes and you should find some good videos about it. I teach a seminar in my company on this topic. So a whole seminar just on this. And saying yes and, the basic tenet of it is to change our approach and the language we use during an ideation meeting to get better innovation. So pay attention in your next meeting like this. And are people in the room voicing an idea and then someone else says, no, that's not going to work? Or says, yes, but what about this thing over here? How are we going to handle that? And then the person who had the idea stops talking and the energy comes right out of the room. It happens all the time. we accidentally squash the discussion with the use of the words no or but. You know, I saw it a few months back. Someone at my company said, hey, we should build an app that does better contact tracing when all this first started happening. And the next person said, yeah, great idea, but we'll never be able to navigate international privacy laws. And there are so many products out there already, it's going to be hard to differentiate. And that killed the conversation. It was over. In the end, the naysayer may have been right. But we also could have missed a great opportunity, and we'll never know. So try something different. Force everybody to say yes and to someone else's idea. So in our last example, after somebody said, hey, we should build a contact tracing application, the next person would say, yes, and we need to look at which customers are in which countries that have different privacy laws. And then the next person might say, yes, and we'll add something to the app that provides them the option to make certain data anonymous to comply with the privacy laws. And then the next person, yes, and there are products out there that do similar things. We need to bring together those capabilities and figure out how to leverage them for the differentiated product. You get the idea. I could go on and on with that example. But by changing our mindset and our language to yes and, more innovation happens. People are energized and more ideas come to the table. And frankly, some of the quieter people in those sessions will have the courage to speak up if all of their ideas are met with yes and. In the end, we still may have decided not to pursue the idea. But even so, I guarantee the best ideas of the group would have been out there to help us decide. So if you take nothing else out of today, bring this with you and try it in one of your next meetings. The last thing on innovation that I really want to talk about is focus. And so you pick up any leadership book and you'll read about how you can't do everything. Leading is picking the most important things and doing them really well. When you're evolving a product, focus is key. Innovate on the biggest problems there are and the ones that are going to be important to more of your users. I was shopping the other day for a new desk chair. I finally admitted that we're going to be staying at home for a while longer, and I actually need a comfortable chair to sit in. And there are so many features on desk chairs. It was completely overwhelming trying to compare all the different chairs and the kind of seats they had and what adjustments they had and everything. And so in the end, I bought a chair, didn't have all the features that I want, it's definitely not the color that I wanted, but it had the couple of key features that I needed. And I valued those features above everything else. And so for me, I'm a little bit vertically challenged. You can't really tell on video. But for me, the adjustable headrest and the adjustment of the arms, those are the most important features. And so I bought a chair that had those and had the best capability in that area. People choose products the same way. It's all about, does this product meet my most important needs? So make sure when you're innovating on your products, you're focusing on the things that are most important to your users. All right, let's go to the next slide. So we're gonna the next thing I want to talk about is leveraging all our available resources. As leaders, we tend to go back to the same people we trust. There's an exercise out there. It's actually a diversity and inclusion exercise called the Trusted 10. If you ever have time, go take that to yourself and actually have your team do the Trusted 10. And what we find is there's a lot of overlap in the type of people that we go to on a regular basis on this Trusted 10 that we use. And when it comes to being a strong leader, especially in times like these, you need to make sure you're leveraging all of your available resources and maybe some resources that aren't immediately available to you, but you figure out how to make them available to you. When you're trying to get something done at speed, you need to think bigger and you need to leverage all the resources available to you and our entire team, not just our go-to people. And we need to focus on leveraging people outside of our immediate physical realm. I work for a global company and we focus on harnessing the power of our global solutions and talent and bringing them to our customers. And it's not easy. You've got to cross language barriers, time barriers. It's the evening for you guys. It's still the morning for me. And you got to navigate import-export laws, but it is worth the investment. And as I talked about with innovation, I'm confident that there are smart people who have solved most things somewhere. My job as a leader is to try to figure out where and how to get access to it. And I know I'm not the first to say it, but one of the few really good things that's come out of this pandemic is that we've all learned to work differently and without being physically next to each other. I can't wait for us to get back in the office. I enjoy people. I get my energy from people. But the barriers of leveraging global resources are crashing down right now. And the impact to each country for this Black Swan event and others will be different. Look at the US, look at India. We're both struggling with this pandemic, and having a large global network insulates your product and you as a leader. Let's go to the next slide. The next important thing, and I talked about when I was talking to my daughter, this is about being a contingency planner. So the first time I led a product organization, I was maybe 10 years into my career about. I made the typical mistake of first-time leaders. I wanted to be agile and I wanted to, be okay moving my direction. But I changed the direction of the team too often. And so instead of it being course correcting, I was actually zigzagging the team. And as a team, they were too busy adjusting to my whims that they weren't getting much done. And one of the speakers at this event, I can't remember who it was, talked about leaders plant a flag. And that really resonated with me. I agree. As leaders, we plant a flag. We come up with the big goal. We point to the hill and say, we're going to take it. And then we inspire people to follow us because we at least appear to know where we're going. Here's the thing, especially in a very uncertain time, it is critical that you keep that vision relatively constant. The vision of where you're going needs to stay constant. Then you need to plan for contingencies and adjust the tactics you're using to get there. So as we talked about with being learners, everything changes. As a leader, you need to have your eyes forward, looking for those changes, planning for them, and then making those course corrections. Leaders, we spend a little bit of time doing some lessons learned and looking backwards, but the majority of our time doesn't matter what happened yesterday, it's all about what's happening in the future. The art of leading is keeping everybody focused on the vision and then quietly making the course adjustments to the tactics so the team can stay focused on the ultimate goal. Which really leads us to the next slide, which is really about being agile. We talk about agility a lot. We talk about it in our development methodologies, which you guys all know very well. I want to talk about it in the context of being agile decision makers. When it comes to products, we talk about experimentation, we talk about failing fast, we know prototypes, we know iterations, we build stuff. We know all about agility. For some reason though, many people still don't apply these tactics to decision making. Leaders need to be decisive. We need to fail fast as well. We need to prototype and we need to iterate. All of those things apply to decision making just as they do for development. As a leader, people look to us to know what to do. And we never have complete information and the environment's always changing. It's an incumbent on us to make decisions anyway. And it's happened a lot during this Black Swan event. The environment's been changing. When it happened, all of a sudden, I don't know about you, but I was working on a Friday, and on Friday we decided we're not coming back to the office for a while. And everybody had to just quickly adjust. But it was important to be decisive and make those actions. And then, here's the hard part. If you're an authentic leader, you need to be okay with publicly being wrong. It's one thing to be okay with being wrong, but you have to be okay with being publicly wrong. You gain so much credibility with your team and with your customers when you are decisive And then you're the one to recognize later when it was the wrong decision. Own it and then adjust it. So my best example for this, about 15 years ago, I built a business case for a small new product that I wanted to add to our suite. I did great research. I understood the industry. I understood the customers, everything I talked about earlier. And I went to the investment committee and asked for $1.5 million to make it happen. And I got the money and I was so excited. It was the first time it was really kind of my baby that I had created. And about $1 million into that investment through a series of discussions with potential customers, that kind of board that I talked about that you get informal stuff from, I realized I made a mistake. And from the time I made my business case to now, which was about, probably 10, 11, 12 months, a few of the fundamental things had changed. A new policy had come out of the government that reduced the need for what we were building. And I hadn't been keeping up. I've been so focused on getting my work done, I wasn't paying attention to the environment around me. And the fundamental problem we were solving, it was no longer anywhere near the top of the needs for that customer base. So their realities had changed and our product probably wasn't going to be that important. So I'm $1 million into a $1.5 million investment. The first time I've been at the front of this, what do? Do we just finish the investment and I hope that something changes and work hard to try to sell something? Or do I own the mistake? I went back to the same investment committee with an updated business case and explained we shouldn't spend another penny. I owned my mistake. I was able to articulate exactly what had happened in the market, what had changed, and why it no longer made sense. And we stopped the investment. We shelved what we had already built, and we lost $1 million. I gained the respect, though, of my management for having leadership courage and respect for my team for being transparent about my mistake. I didn't try to blame it on anyone. I just said, this is what happened. I didn't see it. I didn't see it coming, and then I didn't see it when it happened. And now we're changing courses. Out of that experience, I learned so many things. But most importantly, I learned the value of one, paying attention, hence our first aspect of leadership. And the second was the value of leading authentically, of owning my mistakes and being the one to correct them. So let's go to the next slide. And this is the last part of leadership that we're going to talk about today. And this is about being willing to take risk. Risk is a very big word. And everyone has different levels of risk tolerance. If you're in the early or middle parts of your career and you think you want to move up and you want to lead more people, more products, understand one thing. You must have a high tolerance for risk. Say it again. As a leader, you must have a high tolerance for risk. I spent a lot of time thinking about risk, as we all have lately, and I've come to the realization that my job as a leader is mostly about managing risks. I need to communicate. I need to build a solid team. I need to create an environment where people thrive. But mostly I manage and I accept risk. And there's really two types of risk. The first one is business risk. That's what I talked about with my failed investment. Where do I spend the resources I have? What's going to make my product the best? How am I going to grow my business? And these days, do I have the right cybersecurity in place for the current work environment? When is it safe for people to return to the office, etc.? Business risk is generally measured. You have to take it, but you're always trying to find the right balance of risk and reward. The second type of risk, which you experience more as a leader, is personal risk. And that's where you have to be all in and very comfortable with it, because you are constantly going to be putting yourself and your ideas out there, listening to feedback, good and bad, and adjusting. Authentic leaders are constantly showing their own vulnerability and their imperfect decisions. We are constantly showing what humans we are. Here in the US, right now, we have a lot of social unrest around the Black Lives Matter movement and the systemic racism that exists in our country. And what are the good leaders doing? We're listening. We're opening ourselves up to hearing what life is really like for people. how they're experiencing the same things we are, but perhaps in a very different way. And with that information, we are acting. We are going out there and saying, I didn't understand this before, and now I do. And this is what we're going to do differently as a result. It's simple, really. A lot of leadership is being willing to take personal risk and own your own humanity. Let's go to the next slide. And this is where we conclude. It's funny, every time I put together a seminar on leadership, I always look back at it and say, geez, these are such simple, straightforward things to do. Maybe I'm not digging deep enough. And then I think and I read, and you know what? Leadership is very simple. The concepts are very simple. The challenge is living it and practicing it. So back to where we started, how do we know how to lead a product or a business or a team of people when a pandemic or other black swan event occurs? As I told my 8-year-old, we don't really know. We just start leading. And if you're lucky, you start with a product or solution that's been built in partnership with your customers, and you have deep expertise already in your industry and your customer and their customers. And then we do what we talked about. We lead as constant learners of technology, industries, and customers we serve. We lead as innovators with our customers, applying the yes and methodology and focusing on the most important challenges. We're resourceful leaders that have invested time building a network, and we look beyond our trusted circle and harness the power of that global network. We lead as contingency planners who understand the difference between changing the destination and modifying the tactics to get where we want to go, and who are always planning for the unexpected. We lead as agile decision makers who are decisive and always willing to publicly change course. And we lead as risk takers who have a healthy appetite for business and personal risk and lead transparently and authentically. With all of these habits, you'll be a successful leader in any environment. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to any discussion you'd like to have. Tarun?
Thank you, Stephanie. I mean, there were lots of learnings that I gained from this, and let me summarize all this in my own way so that I can keep it all in my mind. The way I look at what you've explained is I think the key word that you brought out is, all of this is simple, but the key word is practice. The more you practice, the more really then you build that habit of continuing with these. And the structure is this: learn, innovate, leverage resources, and build a contingency plan. These four, and then 3 values that can drive this as a practice. So 3 values are always try and say yes and try that. And there's a pretty interesting and awesome book on this subject, The Opposable Mind by Roger Martin, who talks about how we leverage more on and instead of either or. So we go from either or to and it's a lovely book. And I think our viewers can get a book. I think it's on Kindle or Amazon. Just buy that book, Opposable Mind. The next value is go beyond the trusted 10. And I have a question on that, which I'll pose to you. So go beyond your trusted 10, enlarge your network. And the last is be decisive, make small mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes, be transparent. We're all human beings. Fantastic book by Daniel Kahneman, Nobel laureate, Thinking Fast and Slow. And the magical words in that book is be calm and kind, because really nobody knows any better. So keep trying, make decisions, fail, it's okay. And if we do these 4 things, learn, innovate, leverage resources, and plan your contingencies, follow these 3 values together, use yes and go beyond your trusted 10, be decisive, then the capability to take risks, the tolerance for risk will probably increase, and the habit of making calculated risks would also increase. So this is in a nutshell what I think you said.
You said it perfectly. You should do this next time.
Really? I'll do it with you. You did all the heavy lifting, really. So all I had to do was just sum it up. So one of the questions that comes in mind from the trusted 10 is, so innovation, as you see, has been necessarily a child of serendipity more often than not. For instance, people bumping into each other, often at breakout zones where chit chats often convert to collaborations, producing remarkable results. What do you think we are going to experience with the world at remote? So it's more Zoom and less in person. For instance, I can't see most of our guests. I can't see eye to eye with them, and I can't see in their eyes and talk to them. So, so there's lesser moments of serendipitous encounters. Would innovation or blue sky thinking go into hiding or take a beating?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. It's what we're all concerned about and all trying to figure out. And in fact, I think one of your speakers yesterday or the day before was talking about not just trying to make events the same, but how do we make them better in the virtual world, which I thought was a really great way to frame that question to ourselves. You know, I think for me, I actually worked remotely once before. So for a long time ago, I moved to California and was working with people that were elsewhere in the country and was working from my living room for 4 years. And during that time, I picked up a lot of habits to try to make serendipity happen. And it doesn't always work, but it helped. And one of the things was my random phone call of the day or the week, where similar to, you know, you would pop into somebody's office, I would just pick up the phone and call somebody and connect with them and just see how they're doing. Like I would, how was your weekend? Same type of thing you would do. What are you working on? And try to get some of that to happen anyway, but it's not easy. And we're trying all sorts of things. You know, the great thing is the collaboration tools have gotten a lot better. I did that back in the early 2000s when we didn't have the same collaboration tools that we have now. And so I think for all of us, it's figuring out how do we leverage these new tools to create that same type of innovative yes and environment in the virtual world.
Right. So it's natural human tendencies to always gravitate towards the known faces, the known people. And now with uncertainties, obviously we have heavier loads on our heart and lumps in our throats. So we try to steer towards people that we know. But that's exactly what we don't want to do right now. So we want to keep in touch with everybody we know, but also go beyond and get more perspectives. And that's what you spoke to us about. The other question that comes to my mind is, now, large companies, and you did touch upon them, some of them in your presentation, but let me put that question out a little bit more specifically. The experience is that large companies have a certain structure, which is designed for a certain strategy. No matter how much you will, but black swans are black swans, you cannot predict. And structures are normally rigid in large companies, at least that's the perception one would have. And everything seems right, no major hurdle in sight. And I wrote that line, so I'm going to say it, and bam, there's an iceberg, right?
Exactly.
So how could structures be flexible enough without compromising quality of service and increase in costs while still maintaining consistency, right? So while you're building contingency plan, you did mention that you have to maintain consistency, but uncertainties and structures are rigid sometimes. So how do you make it flexible enough?
That's a great question. And I'm a little spoiled, so I'll be honest here. I'm a little spoiled in that my company has managed to do just that. So my company started with 2 people a long time ago and is structured around a management foundation so that all projects are run the same way. We have the same metrics all across the globe. Everyone's looking at the same set of data and running the business the same way. Yet, all of the decision making is decentralized. And so I lead a business unit in our federal operations. I have autonomy to lead my business the way I need to, given my environment. I still have to report out the same metrics. I still have to use the same systems and the same framework for how I manage my customers. But the individual strategies are all done locally. And so it allows us exactly what you're talking about, is to have both a flexible structure and a consistent structure. And it's something we've invested a lot of time and money and blood, sweat, and tears in developing. But it's a great way to run a large company.
Thank you, Stephanie. I have one last question that I have on board here. I think it's an audience question. Okay. Um, so what we have learned is, and you touched upon this where you said, if I have to work with the medical community, I don't have to be a doctor myself, but I need to know three things: the tech, the industry, and my customers. So at the intersection point of these three is where the magic lies.
Yeah.
Now, so people, and in India, as you would see, is a place where a lot of action is happening with startup. And our prime minister a month back did make a call of self-sufficiency, of self-sustenance at the backdrop of what's happening. And so a lot more people are engaged in trying to build new products and solutions, and specifically probably trying to go niche because that's the best place to start. But many people try to go wide and fail while doing that. Now, so if one person comes from another field, from outside, it's a new company, startup, really not a large contact base of a large company, what are some of the challenges you think one may be faced with when coming from outside the field or industry to innovate during these times of uncertainty?
It's going to be a challenge, right? So the first thing I would probably do is in that kind of circle of people that I talk to, you would have to have people in that community come into that environment with you. And so if you're going to build a niche product for the medical community and you're not in the medical community yourself, it's important that in your trusted advisors, you have people that are sitting in that community. Again, you've got to leverage that network. You can still learn and you can still focus on inundating yourself with what's happening there, but you need to get, and again, it's important when you're looking at that community that it's people with different perspectives in the community. So if it's the medical field, having a doctor's good, but you also want people who are maybe typical patients in that community, right? You want people coming, when you look at that stakeholder map, coming from all the different perspectives to make sure the problem you're solving is the right problem.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much. I think we have Rajesh Sethi now knocking on our doors, saying
I saw
his
that.
section is now due. So, so that's our cue. Basically, we need to get out of the way.
Okay.
Over to you, Menka.
Thank you. My pleasure.